Ladies and gentlemen, my name is TotalBiscuit. I'm here to ask and answer one simple question. WTF Is Dusty Revenge Co-op Edition. It's by PD Design Studio, and it is needless to say the co-op edition of Dusty Revenge, a game that came out on Desura as well as the company's website prior to being greenlit and put onto Steam. And it is a side-scrolling 2D brawler of sorts involving anthropomorphic animals, which may in itself be a turn-off for some people, and I don't necessarily blame them for that. Although, as I mentioned, I think in the Dust video, which is strange considering we're now doing a game called Dusty Revenge, Dust, an Elysian Tale, back in the day, especially in the 90s, there was a hell of a lot of animal characters, and I think, unfortunately, it's the rise of online furry culture that's put an awful lot of people off it, but personally, I don't really mind too much. Let's have a look at the options menu before we get into this, shall we? So, for the most part, you've got what you would expect here. It is a 2D game, so again, details not really all that important. You don't usually need to customize those options. Particle effects can be turned down, which is very nice, considering that, one, they can be taxing on the CPU, especially on lower-end machines, or indeed the GPU. And, of course, you just might not want that much stuff on the screen. You know, it's a fair thing, certainly. So, you know, this pretty much works the way that you would expect it to. And you've got separate sliders for music and SFX, which is always nice, although you don't have it for voice acting, and there's actually quite a lot of that, so that's a bit of a black mark. Controller you can't even select unless you have a controller plugged in. Fine by me. So, what's this? Well, this is the key binding screen. Can you rebind? Well, you can. But only if you click in a certain place, which is really weird. So, watch the mouse. Click, 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 click. Basically, only if you click here or along here can you actually select that. I've seen a few games do that. It's really strange. It's a very, very odd thing, but it's not out of the ordinary, unfortunately. Anyway, a minor complaint. The weird thing about this is that it doesn't show mice bindings? Yes, I suppose we could say that. Mouse bindings. And the reason that I find that concerning is because actually the best way to play the game is with keyboard and mouse, not with keyboard. You'll notice that the recommended bindings for shoot and light attack and heavy attack are left, down, and right cursor keys. Yeah? So you would use WASD and then those cursor keys, kind of like you would a dual stick controller. That's not the best way of doing things, and there's a specific reason for that. So you're more than likely going to want to use the mouse instead. Now, there are mouse button bindings for each of these, but they don't show them, and you can't rebind to that as far as I can tell, which is really weird. Not to mention the fact that the mouse bindings are very strange. The pistols are bound to mouse up, mouse down on the middle wheel, which is a really, really odd thing to bind them to, and it's very awkward. The thing is, if you don't use this, then certain actions in the game which involve precise aiming, specifically using McCoy the sniper, become extremely difficult and actually end up with you having to press that button, then switch your hands over to the mouse to aim, and then switch back. And that is terrible, and you don't want that at all. So I'm not really sure what's going on with this. It's a little weird. Alright, aside from that, it has pretty much what you would expect, so let's get into the game and show you what's going on with it. Is it any good? Well, to the point. So there are two characters available. We're going to be playing the main character, as you might imagine. And the co-op, unfortunately, is local only. So if you're looking for some online stuff, that is not going to happen. We're going to skip back a couple of levels, because this is actually a boss fight, and it's a real pain of just a pain in the ass boss fight as well. So we're going to work our way through a couple of levels here just to show you what's going on, stuff that I've actually already beaten. About 4 or 5 levels into the game here. Let us begin, shall we? Show you what's going on with a Dusty Revenge. Now, the loading times can be a little long. I mean, this isn't too bad, but for some reason the first level took over a minute to load, and that is a little bit strange. It's still not great, considering I'm loading off an SSD and this is a 2D game. Maybe it's just an issue with the torque engine. I haven't had a huge amount of experience with it, but whatever. Alright, so here we go. This is your character. He is Dusty. He is a rabbit. He can use his ears for parachutes, because why the hell not? He also has a bunch of weapons, including the ability to punch fire, because why the hell not? Middle mouse button will bring out a shotgun, which obviously does damage. Rolling the mouse button, for some stupid reason, will enable you to bring out pistols. And you can also fire in 2 directions at once, although it's a little bit awkward to do so. And you can combine it with a bunch of other stuff as well, such as the evade button, and then along with the pistols will actually give you a dive one way or the other. You've then got this scythe, because again, why the hell not? Rabbit with a scythe, might as well. I can believe that. And along we go. Alright, let's kill some stuff then, shall we? So, engage the punching, which there is quite a lot of it, and also the combos and moves and things like that. So, the biggest problem I've got with this is something that's going to plague you very early on. It's something I found out very early in the game and has bothered me up to that point. So a great deal. It's really, really annoying. And that's the fact that the controls do not feel responsive. Now, several reviews of this game have pointed out the same thing, although they don't seem to have pointed out why. So I did a bit of digging and I tried to find out and discern why exactly the controls felt unresponsive. My theory is that the idle animations and the amount of frames used on the animations are just too long. So let me demonstrate. Now, if I pull out the shotgun, you can't actually do anything until the whole animation is completely and totally finished. Now, in better games, this would not be the case. However, I'd like to demonstrate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out the shotgun, fire the shotgun, and then try to hammer the light attack key. Now, in better games, you know, just brawlers that are more responsive in general, what would happen is you'd be able to go into those attacks very quickly. You can't. It actually takes quite a significant amount of time. Even a button press that I did when the actual gun appeared to be gone, like it appeared to have been put back into his whatever he's storing it in, didn't work. You can even hear it. You can hear my mouse press here? It doesn't work. So what they needed to do was allow for players to go into different attacks before the animation had fully finished. And there's plenty of examples of animations that do exactly the same thing here. So if I were to do a dodge roll, for instance, which is done like that. Now, what you would think is that you'd be able to attack kind of straight out of the dodge roll. But actually, you can't. Yeah? You have to be fully upright before you attack. And that results in the game feeling less responsive. This is particularly true on anything that attacks slowly, like, say, the scythe. Yeah? And in fact, with 3 button presses, it actually gives you a fairly lengthy combo. And the fact that you have to put the weapon away as well. So overall, you get a lot of button presses that don't do anything, and that results in the game feeling extremely unresponsive, and that's a real problem for a brawler, which this game most assuredly is. So just bear that in mind. That is not acceptable for a brawler at all. And it's unfortunate for this game, because the game actually has a pretty significant move list. If we have a look at this, we can go to moves, and you'll see there's a lot of stuff. Yeah? At every level, you gain multiple moves. All the way down here, which for some reason won't let me click it. I assume why is that? If you're going to do a PC game, which this game is only PC, by the way, the console version of this was actually cancelled, but let me control the menu. You let me scroll down with the mouse, but you don't let me select things. So I've got to go all the way down here, which is kind of ridiculous. So you'll notice there's actually quite a lot of combos, and it demonstrates each one there. Although it does give you about 3 to 4 combos every level, and it doesn't really give you much of an opportunity to learn them. It just pops a screen up in the middle of a fight saying, hey, you got new combos, and then that's it. And you've got to refer to this menu every time, and some of these combos can take a little bit of learning, as I think you can probably see there. You know, that's quite a few button presses. So they could have definitely done better with teaching you the combos. The problem with these combinations is that lack of response, and also the inability to cancel out of an attack. I think if you could do that more easily, then these animation kind of response problems that I have with the game wouldn't be there. The only way to cancel out of an attack from what I've seen is to roll in the middle of it. So I can do this, and then that's the cancel, you see? And if I do that, then roll, and then I mean, I would love to be able to just, like, attack straight up after that. That would be wonderful. That would feel great, but you can't really do that. And also, there doesn't appear to be a way to cancel mid-air, which means if you get in the middle of a kind of big combo, you can end up in a position where you can't actually stop what you're doing, and you end up getting hit. Worse, there are some times where you can actually get hit by something in the environment, which knocks you into a pit and instantly kills you. It's particularly annoying during boss fights and things like that. So that's the biggest problem I've got with it, although it isn't the only problem that the game has, unfortunately. If you are hoping for some interesting dialogue and maybe even a story, well, you're not going to find one of those. The storyline is family member killed, going on rip-roaring rampage of rabbit revenge. That's about it. The voice acting for the main character is pretty terrible, and it is cliched to the max, but just not done very well. And for someone who apparently has had his family member killed and his farm burned to the ground, he doesn't seem particularly upset about it, outside of every now and again spouting in the middle of a fight for no apparent reason, "I will have my revenge." I was like, come on, really? That's just unnecessarily stupid. Now, that's not to say that the game doesn't have anything going for it. It actually kind of does. It does have some pretty in-depth mechanics. The idea that you can earn extra experience from using your allies. You may have seen them earlier. The ability to summon an ally into a fight. In this case, I was able to use an artillery bear, because why the hell not? And that's key to some of the progression as well. There are some areas of the map that you have to actually destroy by using that. But you've also got these optional kind of finishing moves that you can do. And it adds a nice little dynamic to the fight. This is all mouse controlled, incidentally. So it's pretty easy to do, and this is also why I recommend using the mouse, because if you don't, then what you've got to do is switch to the mouse in order to use that function. There is also another character, a sniper, who you aim with the mouse. It's much, much easier than aiming with anything else. So, as far as I'm concerned, you should be using the mouse for that. And that's a nice little dynamic to it, actually. I quite like it. It reminds me a little bit of the support attacks from Streets of Rage, but you've got a lot more involvement in them, so I approve of that. That being Streets of Rage 1, by the way, if you remember. I think the Streets of Rage 2 and 3 actually switched those out for special moves which took health, which I didn't actually like too much. But yeah, it's kind of nice. It's a bit silly to kind of use them for progression through the level, because it's extremely obvious what you have to do, so it's not like there's any kind of puzzle element there. But I like the inclusion of it. I really do like the inclusion of it. And it looks alright too. You know, it's no Dust, but they're fairly well animated for the most part. I mean, there's some things that don't look particularly good, I've got to say. Like, say the handguns. Like, that doesn't look particularly good, and the reload animations look a bit janky and things like that. So I'm not massively keen on that, but the attack animations look pretty good for the most part. Some nice hit sparks, pretty high detail, fairly high resolution animations. So that's not too bad. And there's a decent amount of impact as well as hit sparks and blood spouts, which look to be pretty good. Which unfortunately makes the fact that the combat feels really unresponsive way, way worse. The enemy AI is pretty dumb as well. It's very, very easy to stun lock them, although it's also very easy to be stun locked as well yourself. So you do have to watch out for that in certain circumstances. And that always makes me sad when something like that happens. Like, your game's got a pretty good art style, you obviously knew what you were trying to do here, but your execution was all off. And that's how I would describe Dusty Revenge in a nutshell, really. The execution is all off. The mechanics do not feel responsive, the brawling does not feel responsive, and if you wanted to get into it for the story, well, it's just ridiculous for the most part.
We came across the territory of Rookhorn, heavily guarded by shooters. They were all hiding in the bunkers, and I was a sitting duck, out in the open, helpless against them. Casey McCoy was the reason we could move on. McCoy was a sniper that came out of nowhere. When the Rookhorn shooters took aim, McCoy's aim took theirs. We'd found ourselves a new ally.
Well, if you want an example of the voice acting and the storytelling, the actual graphic novel kind of cutscenes that they do there, they're okay. But the voice acting, pretty terrible, unfortunately. Pretty terrible. Now, as I was saying, some basic kind of pacing mistakes. The idea that a lot of the checkpoints that you respawn at are before, like, little cutscenes. The boss fight that I was talking about is particularly annoying. Every time you fail that, and it's a long boss fight, you have to go back to the start and be introduced to the boss again, which takes a good amount of time, unnecessarily so, which is pretty ridiculous. So you are relying on the game putting its actual checkpoints in sensible places, which, for the most part, it really doesn't do, so that's pretty annoying. There we go. Yeah, it's just little mistakes here and there, but I could forgive those if it were not for the fact that the combat just doesn't feel good. It's far too unresponsive. Is it fixable? Maybe? I mean, it's just indicative of the animation style they decided to use more so than anything. Maybe they could fix it with the timing, but I'm not sure. As it stands, I can't possibly recommend it. There are plenty of people reporting technical problems with frame rate. I've had some really interesting ones too. My initial attempt to capture the game resulted in the game locking to 30 FPS when the main game runs at over 700. I had to force fraps to record at 60 frames per second in order to make that work, and even then I've had the frame rate drop below that, which is unacceptable considering the main frame rate is like 700 again. Now, capture software can be notoriously finicky, so I'm not going to blame them too much for that. If it wasn't for the fact that plenty more people on the forums are reporting low frame rates and technical problems. So it would seem to be, unfortunately, that this game does have its issues. And it's kind of a shame, because I love these kind of brawlers. I think, you know, they're very nicely... This one in particular is very nicely stylized. It looks good, for the most part. And I think that a lot could be done with it. I mean, they've got excellent move variety. Absolutely excellent move variety. You earn huge amounts of combos, and there's all sorts of interesting mechanics like the support, the ultra combos, and the amount of stuff that you can do with these 4 weapons is kind of great. Plus, the shotgun feels awesome, I might add, just because the sheer amount of damage you do with that damn thing is great. However, sorry, the combat is not responsive enough for me to enjoy it. I wish that it was. I really do. But it's not. And I can't possibly recommend it as a result. Here's hoping they get that fixed, because the game certainly has a lot of potential, but as it stands, the game just doesn't work well enough, I'm afraid. Sorry. Lack of online co-op is probably something that seals the deal for a lot of people as well. So, a bit of a disappointment there for Dusty Revenge, I'm afraid. I did want to enjoy it. Brawler is a genre that I enjoy a lot. I love my beat-em-ups. But I am afraid that Dusty Revenge is not a good one. My name has been TotalBiscuit. Take a look at Dusty Revenge, available for $15 or your regional equivalent on Steam, also via Desura and the developer's website. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.